All right, I'm putting this 1586 back together. Got this valve here and the valve that goes right here. Just changing the O-rings on the bottom there. These old ones were really conical and flattened, so why not just do that while I'm in here. Just gonna put a little dab of Vaseline to hold it in place, make sure it don't fall out. There we go. Okay, get that valve back on. Got the 3 bolts in there. This is the bolt that broke. I put a new grade 8 and a pretty healthy dose of 609 Loctite. Get that torqued. Now I lubed up the piston seal, push that back in. You got to have that valve out or it's just going to be airbound. So pull that valve, slide that piston in, put the valve back in, and then you put this guy back on. Now that oil tube will be in the way of you putting that piston in, so you got to do that first. And I've got the 2 new seals for right there, so we'll do that. Okay, now that valve is on, and this is 1, 2, and 3 bolts. Now that those are torqued down, it's time to mount this whole thing up in there. I'm gonna Loctite my bolts here, and then we bolt that rockshaft hydraulic piece back up in the case. The long bolts go to the rear and the short bolts go to the front. I probably need 2 hands to get the bolts to start. Just line that thing up, so bear with me. Lube up your steel dong. Ease it gently in the hole, paying attention for any flinching or wincing. Okay, now that this guy's bolted in and the dildo is pinned, now that floats up and down, so don't worry about it for now. The next thing is going to be, and I should have done this earlier, but I think I can still slide it over. You got, on this rocker, you got a fat and a skinny. The skinny one goes into that little link rod on that valve, which I wasn't paying attention earlier. Now there's a little washer and a cotter pin goes in there. I'm actually going to take this link here, oriented like that, get that guy straight. I'm trying to look through a camera and do this at the same time. And then that pin goes in the bottom. Make sure you got your E-clip all the way seated on both of them, one there and one there. Now the last one's this guy here, which is easily the most confusing. It's going to set with this wing offset to that side. Okay, so your flange is right here. Now keep this pin in mind, because this pin is going to be sandwiched. That pin is going to sit where my finger is. This is your spring eye. So there's your one rocker there, and that's that push pad that hits that pin. And here's that other push pad. Now these 2 links, this one is going to go up through vertically toward the sky, up through that top cover. This link here is going to hang on this rocker right there. And when I say vertically through the sky, at this moment it's going to head downward at a 45-degree angle. But when the cover's on the tractor, this will be facing up through the sky. So I'm going to orient that like this in my hand, and hopefully one-handedly I can guide that. You see that hole where the daylight is? That's where this end is going to go. Maybe I can do it one-handed. So that's heading up there. This guy is going to go under. And then this one, I'm going to have to let go. Next thing you're going to do is put that spring on here, on this little mount, and then go in and torque that down with some Loctite. Now you got to make sure all your linkages is lined up right. Okay, so you got to have this little eyelet down on the bottom. This thing's going to rock freely, which is going to sling up, and your spring right there is going to hook in that groove. But before we do that, you're going to have to put that little arm on there. Before I add all that complications, look out down in here. So this rocker takes that shaft right there. Well, I'm hoping I got it there. I would say I got it the right way, because I think that notch in it is for clearance with the case. Now, it strikes this pin with the flat side, and that pin moves that bell crank, that aluminum bell crank that's way in there, that's connected to your little pull rod that's clipped on right there. Now, up at this end, this rocker that's on the bell crank at the front of this bracket is E-clipped on there. Don't forget your clip. Make sure you got your E-clip on here as well. Now this pin here rides on this cam. On the high side of this cam, you can see a shiny groove where it's been riding. The cam is on the rock shaft. It does not go in this notch underneath, which is how I first had it up under there. It goes up above on the tall side. And then this will naturally, this pin here on that floating piece will be sandwiched between these two flat fingers. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and put the camera down and roll this up. I'm going to hook that fat spring on there. And then the hard part is hooking your long spring from here to here. That I'm definitely not going to be able to do that with a camera. You can barely do that without it. Well, like a dummy, I got it all put together and forgot to put this rod in. So this guy goes inboard like that. The long end is inside the case. The dog leg end goes to the right and up out of the daylight hole right there. Then we put that E-clip on. And then go forward with the spring. So that seems to be what it all looks like. Crank down real hard on this thing and pull down and hook that in there. It's not too bad. Just watch out you don't get shot in the eyeball when it comes springing up. I tried a couple different tools. The only thing that actually helped me was just regular old channel locks. I grabbed right here and pulled that on. This spring gets hooked up first, then this one, then down there. And I just noticed that this pin should be E-clipped and it's missing an E-clip. It probably doesn't have one before because I don't have one in I don't have any leftover parts. And I was putting everything in the bin, so I got a feeling that was missing. I'll go get one out of my kit, but I think that this is it. I never undid this, and that one's pinned up there, that shackle there. This one down here. This one on the high end of the cam. That rod goes out through that hole. This lever pushes on that pin. This one's on that pin. That's that slide block with the pin in the middle. So hopefully anybody out there in need will be able to use this for a decent guide to get their thing assembled. And as far as I know, this is ready to go back on. Got the gaskets all scraped, so I'll just go get the forklift. Well, the challenge of getting this back on is you got to not drop that lever on this cover, but you got to have the front nose down far enough to get under the cab. So this has got to be hanging at a downward angle there, and that's where this ratchet strap comes in. A little bit more and I think I'll be able to slide it forward. Got that rock shaft cover on yesterday, me and my kid, and one thing I was a little worried about was this lever right there, how it engaged. And I know the lighting's not great, but I got confirmation that that's how it goes from a fellow on Red Power. Can't recall his screen name, but thanks a lot, I do appreciate that. Gives me some peace there. Before I start this thing up, I believe I'm at a point where I can at least just, deadhead the remote and check the hydraulic pressure. Before I get in there and do that, I'm pulling the relief valve back in that off to that last thread where it was when I first got into this job. It was factory staked. I've got this thing cranked in all the way. I was trying to see, would cranking in the relief valve raise the pressure? Would the pump respond to that? And it didn't. It's Joe at Red Run Right. Great guy, helped me a lot. Thank you to Joe. He was the one who warned me, you better watch out on cranking this thing up because it'll give you enough relief pressure to snap the either the gear or the keyway or potentially the pump shaft. Beware that there's an O-ring here, O-ring there, O-ring here, and inside the bore that this goes into, there's an O-ring and a backer ring, and that backer ring is a real joy to change. I would say just change the O-ring and leave the backer alone, but I did both. So if that O-ring's bad, you'll have bypass right around here. It sits about on that mid part of that body. Now I hear the rain coming, so I got to go pull my tools in. Now when you're putting this back together, you're going to have it stand straight up, and you're going to have to be loading that spring. You're pushing it down. You're pushing on that filter screen. Be certain that you're able to push that that internal clip beyond the groove so that it comes up and snaps in. See, that O-ring that's right underneath the screen, it likes to get caught in the groove for the snap ring, and you're trying to push this thing down, and it's going most of the way around. It's going down below, but that spot where there's a little bit of rubber O-ring in the groove, it's going to take up the groove so that you can't get that E-clip or circle clip, whatever, that snap ring. You can't get it in the groove because the rubber is taking up its spot. If it doesn't look like this, you know, where the E-clip is mostly out of sight because it's in the groove, then it's not in there good enough. Now, if this pops apart inside the machine, I believe it could go down in the rear end. You'd be looking at another, you're not gonna be able to get that part. There's nothing about this is sold by the piece. It's a one unit. So you don't want to be losing any piece of it. Okay, so it's running. This is the return line for the fuel tank. I've got it shoved back into the hose. Do yourself a favor, do not trust that thing. It wants to spit back out. So shove a rag in with it, tie it up with a bungee cord, and keep an eye out, because 3 times I had that thing jump out and be spurting that return fuel on the ground. Now the other thing is that there's no oil coming out of that top link cover, except for what's returning the tank. There's a little, you can see a little oil fountain right there. That's what the PTO pump is returning back to tank. So that's just the exhaust oil from the PTO, because the PTOs are turning. Previously, this thing was shooting oil 5-6 feet out the back of the machine because of that bad seal. So if you get in here and pull your top link cover because you've got a low pressure condition, if it's blowing oil down this side and launching it out the back, you're gonna have to pull the rock shaft. That's all that there is to it. There's no amount of wishful thinking will fix that problem. Now with the PTO turned off, that little geyser of oil is gonna stop. So now I'm gonna see how my loader works. Night and day difference on the speed of this loader. Let's see if I can hold the camera swung out and still land in the right spot while I work the valve. I would have to rev the thing up. Oh man, it's like 3 times faster than what it was. Very, very happy. I think it's fixed. Time to get a pressure gauge on there. We got 2200 at idle. And now you can see the overflow from the relief valve is supposed to vent back down here.